Account of the Romansh language **** produced by David Starner, Brett Kuntz and P.G. Distributed proofreaders, handwriting, F. Druce, The Gift of the Author. An account of the Romansh language by Joseph Planta, Esquire FRS. In a letter to Sir John Pringle, Bart. PRS, handwriting, Phil Transvaal LXVI. AD 1776, British Museum, the 30th of June, 1775. Sir, the Bible lately presented to the Royal Society by Count de Saulis, being a version into a language as little attended to in this country, as it may appear curious to those who take pleasure in philological inquiries, I embrace this opportunity to communicate to you, and, with your approbation, to the Society, all that I have been able to collect concerning its history and present state. This language is called Romansh, and is now spoken in the most mountainous parts of the country of the Grisons, near the sources of the Rhine and the Inn. It consists of two main dialects, which, though partaking both of the above general name, differ however so widely as to constitute in a manner two distinct languages. Books are printed in both of them, and each, though it be universally understood in its respective district, is yet subdivided into almost as many secondary dialects as there are villages in which it is spoken, which differ, however, but little except in the pronunciation. One of the main dialects, which is spoken in the Engadine, a valley extending from the source of the Inn to the frontiers of the Tyrols, is by the inhabitants called Leyden. It admits of some variation, even in the books, according as they are printed either in the upper or the lower part of this province. The above-mentioned Bible is in the dialect of the Lower Engadine, which, however, is perfectly understood in the upper part of that province, where they use no other version. The other dialect, which is the language of the Grey, or Upper League, is distinguished from the former by the name of Alava Sad Smilio, and I must here observe, that in the very centre, and most inaccessible parts of this latter district, there are some villages situated in the narrow valleys, called Rainwald, Sepina, B, and C, in which a third language is spoken, more similar to the German than to either of the above idioms, although they be neither contiguous, nor have any great intercourse with the parts where the German is used. It being impossible to form any idea of the origin and progress of a language, without attending to the revolutions that may have contributed to its formation and subsequent variations, and this being particularly the case in the present instance, wherein no series of documents is extant to guide us in our researches, I shall briefly recapitulate the principal events which may have affected the language of the Grisons, as I find them related by authors of approved veracity. C. Ambigatus, the first king of the Celtic Gaul upon record, who, d. about 400 years before Christ, governed all the country situated between the Alps and the Pyrenean mountains, sent out two formidable armies under the command of one of his nephews, one of whom, named Sagavisius, forced his way into the heart of Germany, and the other, Belavisius, having passed the Alps, penetrated into Italy as far as the settlements of the Tuscans, which at that time extended over the greatest part of the country now called Lombardy. These, and several other swarms of invaders whom the successes of the former soon after attracted, having totally subdued that country, built Milan, Verona, Brescia, and several other considerable towns, and governed with such tyrannic sway, especially over the nobility, whose riches they coveted and sought by every means to extort from them, that most of the principal families, joining under the conduct of Rhoetus, one of the most distinguished personages among them, retired with the best part of their effects and attendants among the steepest mountains of the Alps, near the sources of the Rhine, into the district which is now called the Grey League. The motive of their flight, their civil deportment, and perhaps more so, the wealth they brought with them, procured them a favorable reception from the original inhabitants of that inhospitable region, who are mentioned by authors, as being a Celtic nation, fabulously conjectured from their name, Greek, Lepontio, to have been left there by Hercules in his expedition into Spain. The new adventurers had no sooner climbed over the highest precipices, but thinking themselves secure from the pursuits of their rapacious enemies, they fixed in a valley which, from its great fertility in comparison of the country they had just passed, they called Domestica. They intermixed with the old inhabitants, and built some towns and many castles, whose present names manifestly bespeak their origin. They soon after spread all over the country, which took the name of Rhoetia from that of their leader, and introduced a form of government similar to their own, of which there are evident traces at this day, especially in the administration of justice, in which a laets or president, now called landaman or ministral, together with 12 lucumans, or jurors, determine all causes, both civil and criminal. Sad Smiley L. and Livy, M., although he erroneously pretends that they retained none of their ancient customs, yet allows that they continued the use of their language, though somewhat adulterated by a mixture with that of the aborigines. I must here interrupt the thread of this narration by observing, that the only way to account for the present use of a different language in the center and most craggy parts of the Grey League, is by allowing that the Tuscans, who, from the delicacy of their constitutions and habits, were little able, and less inclined, to encounter the hardships of so severe a climate and so barren a soil, never attempted to mix with the original and more sturdy inhabitants of that unfavored spot, but left them and their language, which could only be a Celtic idiom, in the primitive state in which they found them. But to proceed, several Roman families, dreading the fury of the Carthaginians under Hannibal, and perhaps, since during the rage of the civil wars, and the subsequent oppressive reigns, interior commotions and foreign invasions, forsook the Latium and Campania, and resorted for a peaceful enjoyment of their liberty, some into the islands where Venice now stands, and many into the mountains of the Grisons, where they chiefly fixed their residence in the Engadine, as appears not only from the testimonies of authors, but also from the names of several places and families which are evidently of Roman derivation. the inhabitants these emigrants found in that place of refuge could not but be a mixture of the Tuscans and original Lepontii, and the two languages which met upon this occasion must, at the very first, have had some affinity, as the Tuscan, which derived immediately from the Greek, is known to have had a great share in the formation of the Roman. But as it is generally observed, that the more polished people introduce their native tongue wherever they go to reside in any considerable numbers, the arrival of these successive colonies must gradually have produced a considerable change in the language of the country in which they settled, winking sad smiley ah, and this change gave rise to the dialect since called Ladin, probably from the name of the mother country of its principal authors. Although the name of Romansh, which the whole language bears, seems to be a badge of Roman servitude, yet the conquest of that nation, if ever effected, could not have produced a great alteration in a language which must already have been so similar to their own, and its general name may as well be attributed to the Pacific as to the hostile Romans. But when we consider that a coalition of the two main dialects, which differ so far as not to be reciprocally understood, must have been the inevitable consequence of a total reduction, and that such a coalition is known never to have taken place, we may lay the greater stress upon the many passages of ancient authors, in which it is implied that the boasted victories of the Romans over the Rhoetai, for which public honors had been decreed to L. Munitus, M. Antony, Drusus, and Augustus, amounted to no more than frequent repulses of those hardy people into their mountains, out of which their want of sufficient room and sustenance, which in our days drives considerable numbers into the services of foreign powers, compelled them at times to make desperate excursions in quest of necessaries. And we may also from these collected authorities be induced to give the greater credit to the commentator of Lucan, U, and to the modern historians, V, who positively assert that the people living near the sources of the Rhine and the Inn were never totally subdued by the Roman arms, but only repelled in their attempts to harass their neighbors. This whole country, however, from its central situation, could not but be enumerated to one of the provinces of the empire, and accordingly we find that Rhoetia itself, which by the accounts of ancient geographers, appears to have extended its limits beyond the Lake of Constance, Augsburg, and Trent, towards Germany, and to Como and Verona towards Italy, was formed into a Roman province, governed by a proconsul or procurator, who resided at Augsburg, and that when in the year 119, the Emperor Adrian divided it into Rhoetia Prima and Secunda, the governor of the former, in which the country I am now speaking of must have been comprised, took up his residence in two castles situated where Coire now stands, whilst the other continued his seat at Augsburg. But notwithstanding these appearances, no trace or monument of Roman servitude is to be met with in this district, except the ambiguous name of one mountain, X, situated on the skirts of these highlands, and generally thought to have been the non plus ultra of the Roman arms on the Italian side. From the difficulty those persevering veterans experienced in keeping this stubborn people in awe, I mean to infer that such strenuous assertors of their independence, whom the flattering pens of Ovid and Horace represent as formidable even to Augustus, and preferring death to the loss of their liberties, why, favored by the natural strength and indigence of their country, were not very likely to be so far subdued by any foreign power inferior to the Roman, as to suffer any considerable revolution in their customs and language, for as to the irruptions of the Goths, Vandals, and Lombards, in the 5th and 6th centuries, besides a profound silence in history concerning any successful attempt of those barbarians upon this spot, it is scarce credible that any of them should have either wished or endeavored to settle in a country, perhaps far less hospitable than that which they had just forsaken, especially after they had opened to themselves a way into the fertile plains of Lombardy. Some stress must be laid upon this inference, as the history of what befell this country after the decline of the Roman Empire is so intimately blended with that of Swabia, the Tyrols, and the lower parts of the Grisons, which are known to have fallen to the share of the rising power of the Franks, that nothing positive can be drawn from authors as to the interior state of this small tract. The victory gained in the year 496 near Cologne, by Clovis I, king of the Franks, over the Alemanni, who had wrested from the Romans all the dominions on the northern side of the Alps, and the defeat of both Romans and Goths in Italy, in the year 549, by the treacherous arms of Theodebert, king of Austrasia, whose dominions soon after devolved to the crown of France, necessarily gave the aspiring Merovingian race a great ascendancy over all the countries surrounding the Grisons, and accordingly we find that this district also was soon after, without any military effort, considered as part of the dominions of the reviving Western Empire. But it does not appear that those monarchs ever made any other use of their supremacy in these parts than, agreeably to the feudal system which they introduced, to constitute dukes, earls, presidents, and bailiffs, over Rhoetea, to grant out tenures upon the usual feudal terms, and consequently to levi forces in most of their military expeditions. It must, however, be observed, that these feudal substitutes were seldom, if ever, strangers, those who are upon record to the latter end of the 8th century, having all been chosen from among the nobility of the country. Z. And that no foreign garrisons were ever maintained for any continuance of time in these parts, appears from a circumstance related by their annalists winking sad smiley, who say, that an inroad of the Huns in 670, when external forces would probably have been very acceptable to the natives, was repulsed merely by a concourse of the inhabitants. History continues to furnish us with proofs of the little connection this people had with other nations in their domestic affairs, notwithstanding their dependence upon a foreign power. In the year 780, the Bishop of Coire, who by the constitution of that see can only be a native, AB, obtained from Charlemagne, besides many considerable honors and privileges in the empire, a grant of the supreme authority in this country, by the investiture of the office of hereditary president or bailiff over all Rhoetea. His successors not only enjoyed this prerogative to the extinction of the Carlovingian race of emperors in 911, but received accumulated favors from other succeeding monarchs, as the bigoted devotion of those times or motives of interest prompted them. And so far did their munificence gradually extend, that the sole property of one of the 3 leagues, AC, was at one time vested in the hands of the bishop. This prelate and the nobles, the greatest part of whom became his retainers, availed themselves, like all the German princes, of the confusion, divisions, and interreigns which frequently distracted the empire in the succeeding centuries, in order to establish a firm and unlimited authority of their own. Henceforth the annals of this country furnish us with little more than catalogues of the bishops and dukes, who were still, at times, nominated by the emperors, and of the domains granted out by them to different indigenate families, with accounts of the atrocious cruelties exercised by these lords over their vassals, and with anecdotes of the prowess of the natives in several expeditions into Italy and Palestine, in which they still voluntarily accompanied the emperors. The repeated acts of tyranny exercised by those arbitrary despots, who had now shaken off all manner of restraint, at length exasperated the people into a general revolt, and brought on the confederacy, in which the bishop and most of the nobles were glad to join, in order to screen themselves from the fury of the insurgents. The first step towards this happy revolution was made by some venerable old men dressed in the coarse grey cloth of the country, who in the year 1424 met privately in a wood near a place called Truns, in the Upper League, where, impressed with a sense of their former liberties, A.D., they determined to remonstrate against, and oppose, the violent proceedings of their oppressors. The abbot Dissentis was the first who countenanced their measures. Their joint influence gradually prevailed over several of the most moderate among the nobles, and hence arose the league which, from the color of its first promoters, was ever called the Grey League, which, from its being the first in the bold attempt to shake off the yoke of wanton tyranny, has ever since retained the preeminence in rank before the 2 other leagues, and which has even given its name to the whole country, whose inhabitants, from the circumstances of their deliverance, pride themselves in the appellation of Grisons, or the Grey Ones. From this period nothing has ever affected their freedom and absolute independence, which they now enjoy in the most unlimited sense, in spite of the repeated efforts of the House of Austria to recover some degree of ascendancy over them. From this concise view of the history of the Grisons, in which I have carefully guarded against favoring any particular hypothesis, it appears that as no foreign nation ever gained any permanent footing in the most mountainous parts of this country since the establishment of the Tuscans and Romans, the language now spoken could never have suffered any considerable alterations from extraneous mixtures of modern languages. And to those who may object, that languages like all other human institutions will, though left to themselves, be inevitably affected by the common revolutions of time, I shall observe, that a language, in which no books are written, but which is only spoken by a people chiefly devoted to arms and agriculture, and consequently not cultivated by the criticisms of men of taste and learning, is by no means exposed to the vicissitudes of those that are polished by refined nations winking sad smiley and that, However paradoxical it may appear, it is nevertheless true that the degeneracy of a language is more frequently to be attributed to an extravagant refinement than to the neglect of an illiterate people, unless indeed external causes interfere. May we not hence conclude that as the Romansh has never been used in any regular composition in writing till the 16th century, nor affected by any foreign invasion or intimate connection, it is not likely to have received any material change before the period of its being written. And we have the authority of the books since printed to prove that it is at present the identical language that was spoken 200 years ago. These arguments will receive additional weight from the proofs I shall hereafter give of the great affinity there is between the language as it is now spoken, and the Romance that was used in France 9 centuries ago. When we further consider the facts I have above briefly related, the wonder will cease, that in a cluster of mountains, situated in the center of Europe, a distinct language, not a dialect or jargon of those spoken by the contiguous nations, as has been generally imagined, should have maintained itself through a series of ages, in spite of the many revolutions which frequently changed the whole face of the adjacent countries. And indeed, so obstinately tenacious are these people of their independency, laws, customs, and consequently of their very language, that, as has been already observed, their form of government, especially in judicial matters, still bears evident marks of the ancient Tuscan constitution, and that, although they be frequently exposed to inconveniences from their stubbornness in this respect, they have not yet been prevailed upon to adopt the Gregorian reformation of the calendar. As to the nature of this language, it may now be advanced, with some degree of confidence, that the Cialova owes its origin to a mixture of the Tuscan and of the dialect of the Celtic spoken by the Lepontii, and that the introduction of the vulgar Roman affected it in some degree, but particularly gave rise to the Latin, the vocabulary of which, as any one may be convinced by inspecting a few lines of the Bible, has a great affinity with that of the Latin tongue. But these assertions rest merely upon historical evidence, for as to the Cialova, all that it may have retained of the Tuscan or Roman, is so much disfigured by an uncouth pronunciation and a vague orthography, that all etymological inquiries are thereby rendered intricate and unsatisfactory. And as to the Latin, although its derivation be more manifest, yet we are equally at a loss from what period or branch of the Latin tongue to trace its real origin, for I have found, after many tedious experiments, that even the vocabulary, in which the resemblance is most evident, differs equally from the classical purity of Tully, Caesar, and Sallust, as it does from the primitive Latin of the 12 Tables, of Ennius, and the Columna Rostralis of Duilius, which has generally been thought the parent of the Gallic Romance, as also from the trivial language of Varro, Vegetius, and Columella. May we not from this circumstance infer, that, as is the case in all vernacular tongues, the vulgar dialect of the Romans, the Sermo Usualis, Rusticus, Pedestris, ag., of which there are no monuments extant, differed very widely both in pronunciation and construction from that which has at any time been used either in writing or in the Senate. The grammatical variations, the syntax, and the genius of the language, must in this, as well as in several other modern European tongues, have been derived from the Celtic, it being well known that the frequent use of articles, the distinction of cases by prepositions, the application of two auxiliaries in the conjugations, do by no means agree with the Latin turn of expression, although a late French academician, who has taken great pains to prove that the Gallic Romance was solely derived from the Roman, quotes several instances in which even the most classical writers have in this respect offended the purity of that refined language. It cannot here be denied that as new ideas always require new signs to express them, some foreign words, and perhaps phrases, must necessarily, from time to time, have insinuated themselves into the Romansh, by the military and some commercial intercourse of the Grisons with other nations, and this accounts for several modern German words which are now incorporated into the language of the Engadine.ai. The little connection there is in mountainous countries between the inhabitants of the different valleys, and the absolute independence of each jurisdiction in this district, which still lessens the frequency of their intercourse, also accounts, in a great measure, for the variety of secondary dialects subsisting in almost every different community or even village. The oldest specimens of writing in this language are some dramatical performances in verse upon scriptural subjects, which are extant only in manuscript. The histories of Susanna, of the prodigal son, of Judith and Holofernes, and of Esther, are among the first, and are said to have been composed about the year 1560. The books that have since been printed are chiefly upon religious subjects, and among those that are not so, the only I have ever heard of are a small code of the laws of the country in the Cialova dialect, and an epitome of Sprecher's Chronicle, by the porter, in the Leyden. The language spoken in Gaul from the 5th to the 12th centuries being evidently a mixture of the same Roman and Celtic ingredients, and partaking of the same name with those of the Grisons, it will, I hope, not be thought foreign to the subject of this letter, if I enter into a few particulars concerning it, as it seems to have been an essential part, or rather the trunk, of the language, the history of which I am endeavoring to elucidate. One of the many instances how little the labored researches of philologists into the origin of languages are to be depended upon, is the variety of opinions entertained by French authors concerning the formation of the Gallic Romance. A learned Benedictine, Age, first starts the conjecture, and then maintains it against the attacks of an anonymous writer, that the Vulgar Latin became the universal language of Gaul immediately after Caesar's conquest, and that its corruption, with very little mixture of the original language of the country, gradually produced the Romance towards the 8th century. Bonamy, A.K., on the other hand, is of opinion that soon after that conquest, a corruption of Vulgar Latin by the Celtic formed the Romance, which he takes to be the language always meant by authors when they speak of the lingua romana used in Gaul. The author of the Celtic Dictionary, Al., tells us that the Romance is derived from the Latin, the Celtic, which he more frequently calls Gallic, and the Teutonic, in admitting of which latter he deviates from most other authors, who deny that the Teutonic had any share in the composition of the Romance, since the Franks found it already established when they entered Gaul, and were long before they could prevail upon their new subjects to adopt any part of their own mother tongue, which, however, appears to have been afterwards instrumental in the formation of the modern French. Duclos, and, guided, I imagine, by Du Cange, A.O., whose opinion appears to be the most sober and best authenticated, maintains that the Vulgar Latin was undoubtedly the foundation of the Romance, but that much of the Celtic gradually insinuated itself in spite of the policy of the Romans, who never failed to use all their endeavors in order to establish their language wherever they spread their arms. Among this variety of conjectures and acute controversies, I find it however agreed on all hands, that the vocabulary of the Roman, and the idiom of the Celtic, have chiefly contributed to the formation of the Gallic Romance, which is sufficient to prove that it partakes of a common origin with that of the Grisons. There are incontestable proofs that this language was once universal all over France, and that this, and not immediately the Latin, has been the parent of the Provençal, and afterwards of the modern French, the Italian, and the Spanish. The oath taken by Louis the Germanic, in the year 842, in confirmation of an alliance between him and Charles the Bald his brother, is a decisive proof of the general use of the Romance by the whole French nation at that time, and of their little knowledge of the Teutonic, which being the native tongue of Louis, would certainly have been used by him, in this oath, had it been understood by the French to whom he addressed himself. But Nithardus, A.P., a contemporary writer and near relation to the contracting parties, informs us, that Louis took the oath in the Romance language, in order that it might be understood by the French nobility who were the subjects of Charles, and that they, in their turn, entered into reciprocal engagements in their own language, which the same author again declares to have been the Romance, and not the Teutonic, although one would imagine that, had they at all understood this latter tongue, they could not but have used it upon this occasion, in return for the condescension of Louis. As a comparison between this language and the Romansh of the Grisons cannot be considered as a mere object of curiosity, but may also serve to corroborate the proofs I have above alleged of the antiquity of the latter, I have annexed in the appendix, AQ, a translation of this oath into the language of Engadine, which approaches nearest to it, although I must observe that there are in the other dialect some words which have a still greater affinity with the language of the oath, as appears by another translation I have procured, in which both dialects are indifferently used. To prevent any doubts concerning the veracity of these translations, I must here declare that I am indebted for them, and for several anecdotes concerning that language, to a man of letters, who is a native and has long been an inhabitant of the Grisons, and is lately come to reside in London. I have added to this comparative view of those two languages, the Latin words from which both seem to have been derived, and, as a proof of the existence of the Gallic Romance in France down to the 12th century, I have also subjoined the words used in that kingdom at that period, as they are given us by the author of the article, Langue Romaine, in the French Encyclopédie. To the comparison of the two romances, and the similarity of their origin, I may now with confidence add the authority of Fontanini, to prove that they are one and the same language. This author, speaking of the ancient Gallic Romance, asserts that it is now spoken in the country of the Grisons, though not attending to the variety of dialects, some of which have certainly nothing of the Italian. He supposes it to have been altogether adulterated by a mixture of that modern tongue. Whilst the Grisons neglected to improve their language, and rejected, or indeed were out of the reach of every refinement it might have derived from polished strangers, the taste and fertile genius of the troubadours, fostered by the countenance and elegance of the brilliant courts and splendid nobility of Provence, did not long leave theirs in the rough state in which we find it in the 9th century. But the change having been gradual and almost imperceptible, the French historians have fixed no epoch for the transition of the Romance into the Provençal. That the former language had not received any considerable alteration in the 12th century may be gathered from the comparison in the appendix, and that it still bore the same name appears from the titles of several books which are said to have been written in, or translated into, the Romance. But though mention is made of that name even after this era, yet upon examining impartially what is given us for that language in this period, it will be found so different from the Romance of the 9th century, that to trace it any further would be both a vain and an extravagant pursuit. Admitting, however, the universal use of the Romance all over France down to the 12th century, which no French author has yet doubted or denied, and allowing that what the writers of those times say of the Gallic is to be understood of the Romance, as appears from chronological proofs, and the expressions of several authors prior to the 5th century winking sad smiley as, who, by distinguishing the Gallic both from the Latin and the Celtic, plainly indicate that they thereby mean the Romance, those being the only three languages which, before the invasion of the Franks, could possibly have been spoken, or even understood in Gaul. Admitting these premises, I say, it necessarily follows that the language introduced into England under Alfred, and afterwards more universally established by Edward the Confessor, and William the Conqueror, must have been an emanation of the Romance, very near akin to that of the above-mentioned oath, and consequently to that which is now spoken in the Alps. The intercourse between Britain and Gaul is known to have been of a very early date, for even in the 1st century we find that the British lawyers derived the greatest part of their knowledge from those of the continent winking sad smiley at, while on the other hand, the Gallic Druids are known to have resorted to Britain for instruction in their mysterious rites. The Britons, therefore, could not be totally ignorant of the Gallic language. And hence it will appear that Grimbald, John, and the other doctors introduced by Alfred, could find no great difficulty in propagating their native tongue in this island, which tongue, at that interval of time, could only be the true Romance, since they were contemporaries with Louis the Germanic. That the Romance was almost universally understood in this kingdom under Edward the Confessor, it being not only used at court, but frequently at the bar, and even sometimes in the pulpit, is a fact too well known and attested, av. to need my further authenticating it with superfluous arguments and testimonies. Duclos, in his History of the Gallic Romance, A.W., gives the above-mentioned oath of Lewis as the first monument of that language. The second he mentions is the Code of Laws of William the Conqueror, A.X., whom the least proficient in the English history knows to have rendered his language almost universal in this kingdom. How little progress it had yet made towards the modern French, and how great an affinity it still bore with the present Romansh of the Grisons, will appear from the annexed translation of the first paragraph of these laws into the latter tongue. A. If we may credit Du Cange, AZ, who grounds his assertion upon various instruments of the kings of Scotland during the 12th century, the Romance had also penetrated into that kingdom before that period. The same corruption, or coalescence, which gave rise to the Gallic Romance, and to that of the Grisons, must also have produced in Italy a language, if not perfectly similar, at least greatly approaching to those two idioms. Nor did it want its northern nations to contribute what the two other branches derived from that source. But be the origin what it will, certain it is, that a jargon very different from either the Latin or the Italian was spoken in Italy from the time of the irruptions of the barbarians to the successful labors of Dante and Petrarca, that this jargon was usually called the vulgar idiom, but that Spruni, B.B., the father of an Italian literature, and others, frequently call it the common Italian Romance. And if Fontanini's, B.C., authorities be sufficient, it appears that even the Gallic Romance, by the residence of the papal court at Avignon, and from other causes, made its way into Italy before it was polished into the Provençal. As to Naples and Sicily, the expulsion of the Saracens by the Normans, under Robert Guiscard in 1059, must have produced in that country nearly the same effect, a similar event soon after brought about in England. And in fact we have the authority of William of Apulia, B.D., to prove that the conquerors used all their efforts to propagate their language and manners among the natives, that they might ever after be considered only as one people. And Hugo Falkland, B., relates, that in the year 1150, Count Henry refused to take upon him the management of public affairs, under pretense of not knowing the language of the French, which, he adds, was absolutely necessary at court. That the language of the Romans penetrated very early into Spain, appears most evidently from a passage in Strabo, B.F., who asserts that the Turdetani inhabiting the banks of the Betis, now the Guadalquivir, forgot their original tongue, and adopted that of the conquerors. That the Romance was used there in the 14th century appears from a correspondence between Saint Vincent of Ferriers and Don Martin, son of Peter the Ivth of Aragon winking sad smiley BG, and that this language must once have been common in that kingdom appears manifestly from the present name of the Spanish, which is still usually called Romance. Bh. These circumstances considered, I am not so much inclined to discredit a fact related by Mabillon, who says, that in the 8th century a paralytic Spaniard, on paying his devotions at the tomb of a saint in the church of Fulda, conversed with a monk of that abbey, who, because he was an Italian, understood the language of the Spaniard. Neither does an oral tradition I heard some times ago appear so absurd to me, as it did when it was first related to me, which says, that two Catalonians travelling over the Alps, were not a little surprised when they came into the Grisson country, to find that their native tongue was understood by the inhabitants, and that they could comprehend most of the language of that district. This universality of the Romance in the French dominions during the 11th century, also accounts for its introduction in Palestine and many other parts of the Levant by Godfrey de Bouillon, and the multitude of adventurers who engaged under him in the Crusade. The Assizes of Jerusalem, and those of Cyprus, are standing monuments of the footing that language had obtained in those parts, and if we may trust a Spanish historian of some reputation, B.J., who resided in Greece in the 13th century, the Athenians and the inhabitants of Morea spoke at that time the same language that was used in France. And there is great reason to imagine that the affinity the lingua franca bears to the French and Italian is entirely to be derived from the Romance, which was once commonly used in the ports of the Levant. The heroic achievements and gallantry of the Knights of the Cross also gave rise to the swarm of fabulous narratives, which, though not an invention of those days, were yet, from the name of the language in which they were written, ever after distinguished by the appellation of romances. Bk. I shall now conclude this letter by observing, that far from presuming that the Romance has been preserved so near its primitive state only in the country of the Grissons, there is great reason to suppose that it still exists in several other remote and unfrequented parts. When Fontanini informs us, B.L., that the ancient Romance is now spoken in the country of the Grissons, he adds, that it is also the common dialect of the Friols, and of some districts in Savoy bordering upon Dauphine. And Rivet, B.M., seriously undertakes to prove that the patois of several parts of the Limousin, Quercy, and Orphan, which in fact agrees singularly with the Romansh of the Grissons, is the very Romance of 8 centuries ago. Neither do I doubt, but what some inquisitive traveller might still meet with manifest traces of it in many parts of the Pyrenees and other mountainous regions of Spain, where the Moors and other invaders have never penetrated. I have the honour to be, and see *********** #no I oath of Louis the Germanic. #1. Latin, from which the Romances are derived. 2. Gallic Romance, in which the oath was taken. 3. French of the 12th century. 4. Romansh of Engadine, called Leyden. 5. Romansh of both dialects. 1. Pro Deo Amore, it pro Cristiano Populo, it nostro 2. Pro do amor, it pro Christian Poblo, it nostro 3. Por do amor, it por Christian people, it noster 4. Per amor the Diu, it per il Christian poevel, it nos 5. Pro el amor the Deus, it pro il Christian pobl, it nost 1. Communi salvamento, de ista die in abent, in quan 2. Commun salvament, deist dien avant, in quant 3. Commun salvament, de sti dien avant, en quant 4. Commun solvament, the quist di innovant, in quant 5. Commun solvament, deist di innovant, in quant 1. Tum deus saperit possi me idenat, 6 salvabo ego 2. Deus saviit poda me donat, si salvari io 3. Du saverit poi me done, si salvari je 4. Diu saverit poderem dona, psi salvaro ei 5. Deus saviit poderem donat, psi salvaro io 1. Existum meum fratrem Carlum, it in agitum ero 2. Kist mon fradra Carlo, it in adjudaba 3. Kist mon frere Carl, it en adjud ser I 4. Quist mu fra Carlo, it in adjud lisa ro 5. Quist mu frada Carl, it in adjud ro 1. In quac una causa, sic quamadu homo pedirectum 2. In caduna cosa, si cum on pedriit 3. En cascun cos, si cum on pedrect 4. Ingia dunaciosa, si ho el hum pedret 5. In caduna cosa, si como em pedret 1. Suum fratrem salverdibit, in hoc quod ilmi 2. Sun fadra salvardist, in o quid ilmi 3. Sun frere salvadist, en o qui ilmi 4. Sia fra salvardius, in cucula me 5. Su frada salvardis, in cucul me 1. Alterum sic faceret, it ab lotherio nullum placicum 2. Altici facet, it ab lord her null plaid 3. Altici facet, it a loter null plaid 4. Altici fadscis, it the lothar my non pendro ioun 5. Altici phases, it the lothar null plaid my 1. Nunquam prehendum quod meo vol existi meo fratri 2. Nunquam prindre ici mon vol kist mon fradra 3. Nonx prendre ici par mon voila kist mon frere 4. Plaid che con mu volera quist mu fra 5. Non prendro che con mu vola quist mu frada 1. Carlo in damo sit. 2 Carl in domno sit. 3 Carl en dam sit. 4 Carlo si in dam. 5 Carl in damsia. Asterisk 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 hash number 2. The first paragraph of the Laws of William the Conqueror. Hash 1. The Latin translation. 2 The French original. 3 A translation into the Romansh of both dialects. 1 Hassunt legesit consuetudines quas Wilhelmus Rex 2. Ce sunt les leesit les costumes q li race William Grand Tut 3. Q sun las leas els customs q il rei Wilhelm ga 1. Concessit toto populo Anglii post sub actam terram 2. A tut la pupil de Inglaterra pras la conquest de la terra 3. Rantit a tut il po evel de engeltera depo il conquist della 1. Edim sut quas Edwardus Rex cognitus subsa 2. Is les mismes q la race Edward sun cosen tint 3. Terra. E sun las medimus q il rei Edward su cusrin 1. Vavit antium. Silicet, pax sanctae ecclesiae, tu devant lui. Coista saver, Piesa Saint Iglesias, 310 et avant L. Coes the Savi, P. Shalacinta BA1. Kuchaskunk Foris Fuctri Keys Rias Sit Hoc Tempor, It 2. De Cul for Fe Q Home Out Fate En Cell Tens, It 3. Selk dot, BN, The Culs Far Fart QOM of Fat En Cutum, It 1. Veniri Potist Ad Sanctum, Ecclesiam, Pacem Habit Vitae 2. Il Pout Venera Saint Iglesias, Out Piesta Vi 3. Il Pout Venir alla Cinta Basilga, Horn Piche the Vita 1. It Membri. It Psyches Inch Sur It Manaminium Key 2. It de Member. Ese Alquins Meist Main En Celue Key 3. It the Members. Esi Alcan Meta Manacule Q La 1. Matrem Ecclesiam Quasierit, Civ Citabatia Civ 2. La Mir Iglis Requireit, SECEO Fust U Abi U 3. Mama Basilga Requira, Question Ella Fusabatia U 1. Ecclesia Religionis, Redatium Cum Obstularit 2. Iglis de Religion, Rendist Ceq il Javriit Pris 3. Basilga the Religion, Renda Q Question el Saves Praise, It 1. Centum Solids Nomini Foris Fuctri, It Matri Ecclesiae 2. E Cent Sols de Forfe, Edema Iglis de 3. Cent Solds the Sfarfart, It alla Mama Basilga the 1. Parochially 20 solidos, It capelli 10 solidos, It key fragerit 2. Parawas 20 solds, Ida chapel 10 solds, EQ in Freant 3. Parochia 20 solds, Either capella 10 solds, EQ in Frignand 1. Pacem regis in Merchainliga 100 solidis emendat, 2. La Paisla Rei en Merchainli 100 solds les amends, 3. La Piche del Rei in Merchainli 100 solds de amenda, 1. Similita de compensation homicidiae de insidious 2. Alticida Heinferida a white 3. Alticide della compensation dell'omicidi it insidious 1. Precogitatis. 2 perpenst. 4 perpensadas. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Footnote. This is rather a trivial name, but the dialect has no other distinctive appellation. Footnote B. Tshudi, Roy Descrip P43, Marin Topog. Helvet. P64. Footnote C. Sprecher, Simla, Tshudi, Skutza. Campbell's chronicle is looked upon as the most authentic and circumstantial, but there being only a few manuscript copies of it extant in the hands of private persons in the Grisons, I have not been able to avail myself of his researches. Guller and Stumphius might also have furnished some material information, but neither of them have I had an opportunity of inspecting. Footnote D. Live lib vc 34. Footnote E. Other authors place the reign of this king 180 years earlier. Footnote F. Plin lib 3c5. Justin. Lib. xxc5. Footnote G. Cluver, Ital. Antic. Lib. IC 14. Footnote H, a spurious derivation from the verb, Greek, lipo. Footnote I, probably by them pronounced Tamiliuska, the name it now bears. Footnote J, Tussis, Tussia, and in Italian Tosina, the principal place, Rulta, Rutia Alta, Reims, Rutia Ampla, Razunz, Rutia Ima, and above 12 other castles, the remains of which are now to be seen in the Valley Tamiliuska. Footnote K, in some communities there are 14 jurors besides the Landaman. Footnote L, serve in Enid lib 8. 65 lib. X 202. Spreek. Paul. Roy P9. Simnel. Representative Helv. P 281. ED 1735. Footnote M, Liv lib VC 33. Footnote N, Spreek P 214. M. LC. Footnote O, En Codino, perhaps the vulgar Roman phrase expressing incapitini. There are other etymologies, but all equally uncertain. Footnote P, Spreek P10. Footnote Q, Laven, Lavinium, Sus, Susa, Zernitz, Cernito, Ardets, Rd, and C. Footnote R, Spreek P10. Footnote S, a parallel instance of the formation of a language by Roman colonies is the idiom of Moldavia, which, according to Prince Cantemir's account of that country, has still many traces of its Latin origin, and which, though engrafted upon the Dacian, and since upon the Sclavonian dialects of the Celtic, may still be considered as a sister language to that idiom, here treating of. Footnote T, Viderea Roitai bella sub Alpibus drusum durantum it Vindelici. HOR. Lib. 4 OD. 4. Immanes croitos auspiciis repulit secundis. Ibid. OD. 14 Fundat ab extremo flavos aquilones suvos albis, it indemitum reni caput. Luck. Lib. 252. Renumque minissum cornibus infractis. Claude. Lord. Stilic. Lib. I 220. Footnote U, Horton in Lucan, p. 163 edit. 1578 fol. Footnote V, Spreek p. 18 and c. Footnote W, Strabo, lib. 4, sub. Fin. Cluver. Ital. Vet. Lib. IC 16. Footnote X, Julius Mons, Scutzerita. Alp. P 114. Footnote Y, Reutica nunc prebent Thraciac armamentum. Ovid. Trist. Lib. 226. Devota morti pectora libri. HOR. 4 lib. OD. 14. Footnote Z, Spreek p. 52-55. Footnote AA, Spreek p. 58. Footnote AB. This privilege has at times been waived, but never without some plausible pretense, and a formal rescript acknowledging the exclusive right. Footnote AC. The Ligue Cadia, or of the House of God, so called from the cathedral of the bishopric of Coire, which is situated in its capital. Footnote AD. Canati Grisi Occamictu Venrendi. Memoirs ad hoc antiqua libertatis. Spreek. p. 189. Footnote A. The following barbarous distich is sometimes inscribed on the arms of the three leagues. Foedra sunt Cana, Cana fides, Cana libertas, hic tria sub uno continentia corporoito. Footnote F. See Dr. Peirce's preface to his translation of Mallet's Northern Antiquities, Peaks ye where this question is more amply discussed. Footnote AG. Conf mem des inscriptum xiv p. 608. Footnote A. Bonamy, v mem des inscrip lc. Footnote AI. Tapfada, Trapfer Keat, Bravery, Nada, Narheit, Folly, Kleinet, Kleined, a jewel, Graph, Account, Bor, a peasant, and c. Footnote Urge, Rivet, Hist. Lit. De la France, Tom. 7 p. 1. It seek. Footnote AK. Mem des inscriptum xiv p. 594. Footnote L. Bullet, Mem de la langue celtique, Tom IP 23. Footnotum, Mem des inscriptum xiv p. 603. Footnoten, Mem des inscrip. Tom. 15 p. 575. It seek. Footnote AO, Pref. Gloss. N13. Footnote AP, Duchesne, Hist. Frank. Tom. 2 p. 374. Footnote AQ, no I. Footnote R. Elarc. Ital. p. 44. Footnote as. Fidea commissa quo cunc sermone relinqui possunt, non solum Latino vel Greco, sed etiam punico vel Gallicano. Digest. Elxy. Tit. 1 sec 11. 2 autem vel Celtis, vel si mavis Gallis, loquia. Sulp. Sev. Dial, I, sec 6. Subsin. Footnote at, Gallia causidi costarcit facunda Britannos. Juv. Saturday 15. 111. Footnote or, William of Malmesbury L2C4. Footnote AV, Ingulf Passim. Duchesne, Tom. 3. Footnote AW, Mem des inscriptum 17 p. 179. Footnote AX, Wilkins, Leges Anglo-Sax. Footnote A, Append. No, 2. Footnote AZ, Pref. Gloss, Nxz. Footnote BA, Fontanini, p. 4. Footnote BB, Spren. Dial, Passim. Confmenage, Arig. Delalingital. Voce Romanza. Footnote BC, font P17. Footnote BD, Murat. Scrip. Ital. Tom. VP255. Footnote B, Ibid Tom 7P322. Footnote BF, Lib 3. Footnote BG, Mobilan L64, N124. Footnote BH, Orozco, Tes. Castile. Voce Romance, Conf Crescim. Volg. Pos. LVC1. Footnote by, Act. Ben. Seek. 3P2. P258. Footnote BJ, Rame. Montenero Cronica de Juani. Footnote BK, Hye, Arigdes Rom P126 ED 1678. Footnote BLP 43, 44. Footnote BM, Hist. Lit. De la Father Tom. 7P22. Footnote BN, the word ecclesia being more modern in the Latin tongue than basilica, the Romansh word basilga derived from the latter is an additional proof of the antiquity of this language. ****** End of the Project Gutenberg ebook account of the Romansh language. ***** Updated editions will replace the previous one, the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works, by using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg. You agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General terms of use and redistributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works 1.0. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, The full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4 Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. 1.e.5 Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. 1.e.6 You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark symbol website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages. except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4. Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5. Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6. Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, and c. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark symbol's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark symbol and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, UT 84116. 801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments, and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg Trademark Symbol Electronic Works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks. The full Project Gutenberg license,